everyone. Welcome to the garden at the Ethel Library. This is part 2 of starting seeds in the Northwest, and it's been just over 3 weeks ago that we planted some seeds in these 2 flats, and they've been in my shed in Post Falls on a heat mat in a south-facing window. And I've just been watering them and watching them germinate and grow. So if you'll remember, we planted tomatoes and jalapenos and basil in this flat, and these are the snapdragons, zinnias, and bells of Ireland. So today we're going to thin these because when I planted, I put a few seeds in every cell on this flat that has the separate cells or the pony packs in them. And I just scattered the seeds for these on top of the whole flat of soil. So, now a lot of people have a hard time thinning seeds because, each one of these little plants is a life, and it's kind of hard just to pull them out or cut them off, but it's something that we all need to do, and it's for the sake of the health of the plant that is remaining. I know it sounds kind of heavy, but so you can see here that in the tomatoes, like this one, only one seed germinated, and look how tall and healthy and robust this little seedling is. And then there's a few coming up in these other cells, more than one, like 4 of them in here, 4 of them in there, and we don't want 4 seedlings in each space, because they compete with each other and none of them do as well as they would if there were only the one of them in there. So we are going to thin some of these plants out so that the remaining ones can grow and thrive. So we're going to zoom in and I'll show you how 2 different ways you can thin them. Okay, now you all can get a closer look of the seedlings in these 2 flats. And these are the tomatoes, beefsteak tomatoes. And thinning just means that you are going to thin out a few plants within each space to give the remaining one more room or enough room. So here you can either pull them out. Sorry. They don't mind, really. And these can be added, the seedlings that you pull can be added to the compost pile, so it all goes around and helps in another way. So sometimes when these are rooted really close together, that it takes more to pull them out and can disrupt the root system of the remaining plant. So another way you can thin is by getting some small scissors and going in and just cutting off the plants that you're going to remove. This is quicker and not quite as traumatic. Just kind of remove the shortest one. And here's that one that had 1 seed to this cell, and it's very robust and happy, and he's glad he has a lot of room to grow. So we're going to give that to each of these tomatoes. And you can transplant these ones rather than thin them or pull them out. You can wait a bit and transplant them into another space. If you are transplanting, be very careful and use the leaf itself to move the plant around or to set it into the new pot, because you don't want to hold on to the stem, and because if you push too hard, that stem is where it takes up water and sends down nutrients from the sun. So you don't want to damage that stem itself when you're messing with the little seedlings. You want to, if you pull a leaf off, that is not going to, harm the plant in a way that you could if you squeeze the fragile little stem. So I'm going to just continue thinning. These are the little basil plants. Basil can grow in a bunch easier than like a tomato or a jalapeno. Those need to be just one plant by itself pretty much. Basil, you can have a few of them growing together and it'll just be like a more bushy basil. But I am going to thin some of these. Like this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plants in it. We definitely don't need that many in one place. They will compete with each other. Basil will do better, like most any seedling, if it's just one by itself. Then it can take up as much space as it wants. So that's how you thin. And you could do this, they're starting to grow where they will use up the space they have. It could be done, 4 weeks from the time you plant them. It depends on how well they grow. And then over here, of course, we have the zinnias, snapdragons, and bells of Ireland. And I like to share this. If you grow zinnias or snapdragons or a lot of flowers, the base of the stem that's going into the ground will have a color to it. And this one's kind of reddish. And then this one is green, no red at the bottom. So this will tell you about what color those flowers are going to be. If it's got a red base, it's going to be a darker pink, red, orange color. If it's green at the base, it'll be yellow, light green, maybe a light orange, pink. They're not as dark. So that's a good way to determine what color of zinnia you're going to get. And same goes with snapdragon. You can look at the base. These two look kind of red at the base. There's a green one. I am going to let the zinnia and the snapdragon grow a little more. And when I do transplant these into the garden, and I'll show you on part 3 of how to take these out of the flat and put them in a pot or right into the ground. And zinnias are one of my favorite, and I really don't like to waste any. I mean, these little snapdragons, you can go in and thin a little easier because there are more of them, and they get, it's a teeny tiny seed, and they grow up to be good sized plants. But I'll thin these a little bit just because they're so thick in here. You can pull these like so, just to give them all a little more room. Okay, I hope you all have a good idea of how to thin. Now at this stage, there are some other considerations. So, as your seedlings are growing, you want to, of course, watch them, and when they start to get to a certain size, you can start to fertilize them with a water-soluble fertilizer like Miracle-Gro. So it's that powder that you put into the water and water in to fertilize your seedlings just a little bit. And when a seed germinates, it starts to come up, and then 2 leaves come out. And those are called the cotyledons. and they are the seed leaves. Those leaves are already in the seed, and they come up, and those leaves are what put the energy back into the seed to make roots. And then the next leaves that come up are considered the true leaves. So once your seedlings have true leaves, then you can feel comfortable about fertilizing them. There's no need to fertilize, and it's really not a good idea to fertilize if you only have the seed leaves growing so far. So these, as you can tell, here's the cotyledons down here, or the seed leaves. This tomato already has 4 true leaves. These jalapeno peppers have 2 true leaves. The basil have 2. Anyway, they're growing along, and they're going to start needing a little bit of food or fertilizer. So you can start doing that, but don't get it real heavy or strong. And then these seeds, as I've mentioned before, are in my shed on the heat mat. So the heat mat is at 55 degrees. So they sit there, and the seeds, or the bottom parts of the plants, stay warm enough. The shed itself probably gets down into the 40s, which is cold, but as long as their roots are warm, they're fine. So our days are getting longer and warmer, and you'll want to do what's called hardening off. And to do that, I take these flats out and I put them like on the east side of the house, or where you have some sunshine. And then if you forget about them, you go, oh no, and 5 hours later you go out there and they're all fried, because a plant can't go from no direct sunlight out to direct sunlight for hours. It's going to burn it up. It's going to make it crispy and dead. So you want to harden them off, which means get them used to being outside, whether it's the full sun or the temperature, the true temperatures that are outside. So I like putting mine out on the east side of my house, because earlier in the day. So there's sunshine on the east side and they're warm. And then if I forget about them, which I'm better at not forgetting about them, by the time you remember them, the shade from the house or whatever wherever you're placing them on the east side where they get that morning sun will provide shade. So anywhere where they can get an hour of direct sun, and then you put them back in the shed, or they get into some shade. Does that make sense? Where you don't want to leave them out in direct sun for over an hour. And do that like every day if you can, or as many times as you can. Put them out in direct sun, bring them back in. Put them back out, maybe for 15 minutes longer, bring them back in. And keep doing that, and they will reach a point where they can stand being out in full sun all the time, once they're hardened off. Of course, tomatoes, you don't want to put those, or peppers, you don't want to put either of those out until June. I'm in Post Falls, and I wait till June to put out these warm season crops. And basil too likes a warm soil and warm nights and warm sunny days. So of course, harden these off, and then around June you can put them directly outside, or if you're putting them in pots, you can plant them into your pots and put your pots outside during the day, bring them in at night until you feel like, oh, it's been warm at night, my plants are used to the sun, they're all hardened off, they want to be outside now, and then you can leave them. I mentioned planting the cilantro and the peas, those cold season crops. You can put those seeds into the ground about now if your soil is workable. You'll read the seed pack, plant your pea seeds when the soil is workable in the spring. I have some areas that are sunny enough that the soil's warm and it's good for them. It's good for those cool season crops to be planted outside. And raised beds, the soil gets warmer faster, so you can plant in those sooner than, in a cold ground level. So that's about it for thinning and for hardening off and fertilizing. We'll be back here in a couple of weeks to transplant these into bigger pots. See, this tomato here is nice and big, and he's gonna run out of room here pretty soon. So again, it's still too cold to put him directly out into the garden, so it would love it if we gave it more room to grow, and it'll do better. So planting these bigger ones into bigger pots is what we'll need to do before we put them outside a month from now. So we'll need to transplant some of these. The basil, maybe not. They're smaller plants and have a lot more room in the pony cell to grow some more. But we'll be back soon to talk about transplanting and show you how to do that with the flat of flowers we have going as well. So thank you for joining us for planting seeds in the Northwest, and come in and ask us any questions, and I hope you're all trying this on your own because it is a lot of fun. Thank you. See you next time.